Hello, everyone. This is Jay Ware from Unity and Diversity, and welcome to our new series that we're going to be putting online. It's called Conversations, and hopefully, this is going to be a very enlightening event. People can be a little bit more educated when they come out of it than when they went into it. That's the goal, anyway. We have several people here today, and the topic that we're going to start with is we all want to raise children that are open and not just tolerant, but open and curious and actively interested in people different than themselves and people from different cultures, races, situations. And often that can be a very difficult thing in an environment that isn't necessarily open and inviting to them. I met Rhonda a while back. She's a local activist as myself. Met her at an NAACP meeting, and we started talking about this as an issue and how rich of a conversation this is just among African Americans. But it occurs to us that that it's not just a race thing. I mean, obviously, there's a lot going on with the Latino community right now in the age of Trump, and also with LGBTQ issues. I think that we're going to have a nice, rich conversation about how is it that we raise children to be open and accepting when often the world isn't open and accepting to them. And it's a challenge for us as parents. And I'll just go around here. I want to introduce Mindy Lemonholm to begin with, a longtime member of the ELCA and a mother, a parent of children who are gay, or one child exactly, right, who's gay. On this side, I mentioned Rhonda Robinson,
Yep.
Local educator and activist, and all around just gadfly. Seems to be where the action is, right?
Yeah, I like that.
That's where I like
I'm
to
a
be.
busy one.
And this is Cesar Sanchez of the Latino Leadership Coalition.
Coalition of Latino
Coalition of Latino Leadership. I always get that backwards.
That's okay.
But so anyway, we've got a bunch of people. We're all parents,
Yes.
and
Yes.
the ages of my kids are actually pretty old. I've got one of them that's 29, then 26, and one that's 20. I know you've got little bitty ones.
I
Just
little
had
ones.
a baby.
Yeah, I just had a baby too. So.
All right, fantastic. And how old are your children?
I have stair steppers, 28, 27, and I have an 18-year-old who's in college.
Ah, so your kids are about the same age as mine.
Yes,
so
exactly.
They're in that
Transitioning.
transitioning to adulthood, falling back, all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
They'll get there. And how old are your kids, Mindy?
19, 18, and 15.
Ah, I see. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your story and how the whole idea of raising children who are open and inviting and maybe in an environment that isn't always so sometimes hostile to them.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I've always had this notion that God loves everybody.
Yes.
And that God doesn't create somebody that God doesn't love.
Right.
Absolutely.
And when I was growing up, I wasn't a part of the ELCA, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, and but my faith was really important to me, and being involved in a youth group was really important to me.
Right.
And so things would come up, and I would just ask myself, like, well, like, how would God feel about that? Anyways, in one specific category, I knew somebody who was sort of afraid to let this secret out. This was in the 1980s, but it turned out that she was gay, and she was involved in a relationship, a same-sex relationship, and she was part of a church, and the reaction of the parent was that this couldn't happen. This couldn't happen in her house because I think she felt that what was taught in church proved that this was wrong, and everything. I think she felt ashamed, very much ashamed, and it was different, and nobody else. I mean, at the time, we didn't know anybody else. In my youth group or growing up, we didn't know anybody else, who was openly gay,
Right.
and. Interestingly enough, I know that across the country there was a lot of anti-gay bullying that was going on.
Right.
So just in following her story and watching what happened with her, I realized, well, if I ever had kids and it came out that, they were gay, I wouldn't question my acceptance of them and my love for them. I wouldn't question that God loved them just the same as God ever did.
So you were going through these ideas when you were in your teens and 20s, huh?
I did,
Wow.
as well as the whole abortion thing too. Like, how could God, how could God not love that woman? How could God love that unborn baby as much as that woman? Anyway, that was another thing that I couldn't wrap my brain around. My church believed in, only caring for that unborn child. So anyway, that's a whole different topic.
Yes.
Maybe for a different conversation starter.
Hopefully.
However, it did happen that one of my children, when he was in his teens, told me. He remembers it differently than I do, but the bottom line is, it turned out he was gay, and he was open to say that. And once I heard it, it made sense, and I gave him a big hug, and he didn't think it was a big deal. I mean, which said he grew up going to Auburn High School, and he sees.
So you were already here in Rockford when your son.
Definitely, yes, definitely. And when the other story happened, I was in Minnesota, in Duluth, Minnesota. So he already felt encompassed by a great deal of diversity, and his diversity was maybe minimal compared to other people's diversity. The way that he was different. I don't think he ever felt a lack of acceptance or bullying.
Well, that's a good thing.
It's pretty amazing. So
But has he have encountered, or he certainly is aware that there are faith traditions that are actually hostile to them? Because I think
Right.
I think that's really one of the big keys is how do you teach a child that, well, you're getting hostility from a certain group or some people,
Right.
and
Well,
I think people may find patterns and they decide, well, I don't want nothing to do with those.
it is interesting that you mentioned that because in 2009 we were living in northern Minnesota, and that's when the ELCA as a whole, as a churchwide assembly, voted to ordain gays and lesbians.
Wow.
Yes,
I know, as a whole, provided that they're monogamous or whatever.
Yeah.
That was that's what it said basically, and that was a major shift in the churchwide thinking, which I was very grateful for because at the time, my son was about 10 or 9.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't know. I just thought that was wonderful. But our church at the time was very upset.
I remember
Very
reading that was something that
upset.
really shook the ELCA.
And they wanted to vote to leave the ELCA. And so my husband, who happens to be a pastor, worked with the congregation to try to, help them understand what this really meant and lead them through this. Like, what do those verses mean in the Bible, and how have we sort of attached meaning that's not quite there to some of those verses. I mean, we misuse a lot of those verses.
Right.
So yeah, he did probably before he really was.
Before he was aware of himself, he knew that there
right.
was.
But we thought that to raise children in that kind of hostility, regardless of who they were.
See, I think this is an interesting conversation because, I want my kids to grow up and not feel hostile or attacked or closed off to anybody, And I think it's a very similar thing that you're going through that okay, I have to teach my kids that, look, the world can have teeth and you may have some really bad experiences
That's true.
from white folks, right? And that doesn't mean that you need to be hostile to all white people. And I can see the same thing with you because, you want your child to grow up with a relationship with God, with,
Definitely.
I mean, we share the same religion. I mean, my relationship with Jesus is very important to me. But now, how do you do that when he knows that, well, there are people that are really against me, and it's a very, very similar situation, I think.
Yeah.
I guess it falls into accepting
does.
In our society now, it seems like everyone wants to put everyone in categories instead of accepting people as they are. If I like girls, I like girls. If I'm a Baptist, if I'm whatever religion I believe in, then respect it. So respect who I am.
Right. And that's so great that you said that, Rhonda, because he wants to be himself before he's that gay kid. I mean, he doesn't want to be known as that gay kid. Just anybody, they just want to be them. They want to be treated as,
And I'm sure he has many more talents than just putting a category over him. Oh, he's gay, he's this, he's that.
Right.
But that's how our society is. And why is it like that? I don't know. If I could wave a magic wand and fix it, I would do that. But it's been like this for centuries.
I know.
But as you said that, I took an online course once, for college credit, and I thought, well, this will be really interesting because I won't have to deal with anybody dealing with the race thing because I'm just typing, and so on and so forth, right? I mean, this will really be interesting.
Oh my God!
And I spilled the beans within like 30 seconds because it's like, if these people can't, they got to know that I'm black in order to know me. And then I just needed to get it out there because I didn't want anybody typing the N-word or something, not knowing I'm there. Or, I don't know, I just went through a lot of weird stuff. I mean, just being black is who I am, and I don't want people to not see it. I want people to see it. I just don't want people to react in a stupid way. That's all, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. But it's interesting with your situation. My kids are of mixed race. My wife is white, and your husband is black, and your kids are black. So it's much more the same situation that I had when I was coming up, and it'll be interesting. What was the talk that you gave your kids? I want just to compare notes, on how you.
My daughter.
Got them.
Once she was going through and said, hey, what do I want to do in life? I don't want to be a teacher. She said, we don't make enough money.
Wow. I don't want to do the same thing you're doing.
And her dad was a police officer, and she says, I have that. And my mom was a nurse, so she was like, I like that field. So she said, my girlfriend, who was an airline stewardess, she said, I think I want to try that. So she went to St. Louis, took the classes and everything, and she became an airline stewardess. And she had an incident that happened to her. She was on a plane, and the stewardess there, A and B, she was B. And one of the guys said, hey, the cot right here is some air coming through. So he told her, but she went to A and told A. And something happened in between where she got fired. She was distraught. It was horrible. She goes, but I was B and I told A. But they signed a contract at the beginning saying anything occurs, we can fire you for any reason. And so that was the reason. And she didn't understand it. She was so confused. And I was like, okay, Brittany, you have to understand. She says, well, he wrote in the report he told the black girl. And I said, well, that's just the type of society we live in. You're African American. You are considered what they call black. She goes, well, Mom, but why do they have to put a title on it? That's not who I am. I'm Brittany Holman. I'm not that. And so it was kind of long and dragged out. And then she went off and she went to Loyola, and she said that she felt like they didn't want her in the school, and she called me crying. I'm like, oh. She says, because I'm the only black girl in my class, and when I ask questions, they laugh at me. I'm like, some people can be mean. So just teaching all that in general is hard, and it goes for all races. It does because sitting around in my classroom talking to my fifth graders, and when we talk about race, we do circle every morning, and race comes up, and it's amazing what kids say.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So when it comes back to my own kids, I have to put all that in my head. And like my youngest son, he dates white girls. And my daughter, she went with a guy who was Latino for about a year. So they like us 80 people, they don't see the same things we do.
No,
they don't care.
I think millennials
they
are
don't care
trying
anything
to see
about
things
race
differently.
or anything like that. So that conversation is a little different because they really don't want to hear it.
But I do feel that we're in a
Right.
position, we're in a period of backlash, at
Yeah.
this point. It feels like there's, I know I feel less comfortable, and I think that there are folks that feel empowered to say some pretty ugly things.
Well,
Oh, it's-
45 did that.
Yeah, 45
Yeah.
started that when he called
yeah.
Mexican rapists and
Yes,
criminals. And,
45 did that.
I mean,
Right.
45 has, I mean, for the Latino community, and I have daughters, small daughters, what they come back with from school is, these are, third graders and, talking about, they're going to deport so-and-so. They're not going to go to school tomorrow because their parents are scared, so
Oh my gosh.
45 has definitely empowered
Absolutely.
individuals to come out and say, we don't want you here,
Seeing ugly, ugly things.
and it's what I tell my daughters is we can't live this life with the same type of hate that those individuals have,
Right.
so explaining it to them, especially my oldest, who every time she when the election happened almost 2 years ago, I had to explain to her how democracy works. People vote, and that's how a president becomes president, right?
Very
So
good.
but what for her isn't like, how did that happen? Like, boo, Trump, boo, boo. So I have to sit back and say, we have to. He won, fair and square. This is just democracy, right? But then how do you take it where for them it's one of those things where it's like, well, Jose's not coming tomorrow because his parents don't want to send him to school. His parents are gonna get deported. I don't want to. I'm not gonna see my friends tomorrow. I'm not gonna see. So how do you, just the emotion, just that these kids are coming home with, and
Are these have they experienced one of their friends actually being deported, or just rumors of
it
deportation?
was mostly all rumors. But this is what kids are talking about at the lunch table, and I am sitting here like this. I didn't go through that when I was a kid. I did not. I did live in California around the Wilson when he was
Oh,
governor,
yeah.
and he had some
186,
187, or he had a proposition.
Something like
I remember I was really young, and I remember we went to protest and did what we had to do, but that was pretty much it, and everything kind of that
Right.
was it for me. School was fun, but just this is just taking me back to now my kids are going through this, and we're in 2018.
Oh my gosh! You talk about
but-
take it back.
Take it back. So I mean, it's for me, it's just, I have both of my daughters go to the same school, so both come with different stories. But this is what kids are talking about at the lunch table. And this is sad. Like,
In high school, I teach Spanish, and some of my students are native speakers, and how it affects them when they get to high school is they don't talk.
Yeah.
yes, you keep it to
And
yourself.
Really.
they have a ton to say, and that they have a lot that they would like to ask or just, talk to somebody else about, but somewhere. And they talked, and I had some students before the
Oh, they
election,
talk amongst them.
and they talked then, and they expressed
And now they're
deep
kind of
fears,
shutting down.
and then that
shut
door
down.
just.
I would-
So I saw
saw
the
that
difference.
I'm gonna say this is one of the things that was on my heart. That day that he came down that staircase and said, Mexicans are rapists and they're murderers, and some, I suppose, are good people, all that, I just was transported back to my childhood because, well, I'm sure you remember George Wallace.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Oh my gosh. And when I was younger, you had this segregationist that was running for president, and the Democratic Party basically kicked him out and said, "You run for president if you want to, but you don't get to be a Democrat. You got to do that all by yourself." And I was just a little bitty kid because he ran in '68, and so I was like 7, 8 years old at that time. And someone had given my father a Wallace sticker as a joke, right? So we got the sticker in my house, and I'm looking at this sticker, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna, I got to play with the sticker, right? I figured we were for Wallace. And so I asked about it, and said, no, we ain't putting that sticker up, right? I couldn't understand it. So I put it up the next day. I took that bad boy, put it right on our picture window. And, yes.
Oh, no.
So my mother comes out, and she about swallows her tongue. She's like, ah! And then she's like over there feverishly trying to get this damn Wallace sticker off of the house, with a razor blade and so on and so forth. And I can't remember exactly what she was saying. All I remember is the emotion that I had really, really upset her. This is a bad man. What are the neighbors going to say? All this kind of thing. So all of a sudden, I'm watching this guy Wallace, and he was saying awful things, just awful things, and I had to hear what is segregation mean. And at that time, I was going to St. Paul Lutheran School, and it was certainly an integrated situation because the pastor Fritz there was going to integrate his school at the same time they were firebombing churches down in Birmingham, right? You know, so I had in my head, if this man wins, I don't get to go to that school anymore because he doesn't like integration, and I was just very nervous about this. And then on the election day, he actually won several states, and he won Mississippi, and my mother was from Mississippi, and I remember this day she was watching the TV with her hand over her mouth, and I'm like, he won Mississippi, you know, what does that mean? Does he get to keep it? I mean, I didn't understand, you know, what is going on. And so anyway, it worked out. He didn't get to keep Mississippi, you know, but then he ran again in '72.
Oh, he's an ambitious one.
Yeah,
very ambitious.
Yep, he ran again in '72, and I knew who he was then, because now I'm like 11.
Yeah.
And Governor Wallace was shot on the campaign trail, and he was put in a wheelchair, and you know, and so now I go up to my mother and I say, I'm glad he was shot, you know, and how come a black person didn't shoot him? A black person should have shot him. And so I caught a backhand right immediately on that because, you know, you don't get to talk like that, and Jesus don't like that kind of ugly, all that kind of stuff. So every time this guy's name came up, it was just bad news for me. But
I'm laughing, but I know
exactly what he's talking about
Yes.
because I have to teach my daughters to.
Right.
You gotta take it back one notch with them and explain to them. No, don't say that.
Right.
Don't be the bigger person. You know, he's just saying it to appeal a certain type of base that just doesn't want to understand. You know, and then. But I do, I mean, exactly what you go through is what I'm trying to go through in this hostile environment and explain to them that, you know, we can't be like that. You can't grow up. You know, if 45 says it, well, then let 45, he's an adult. But we don't say that in my house.
No.
Or we don't act this way. You don't act this way in school or in public. But I know
there's nothing wrong with saying that is wrong.
That is wrong.
And you know, that guy is an idiot and whatever. I encourage that sort of thing, you know. Now, there have been times that, you know, it gets a little too much. My son, at one point, when he was younger, he was mad at his sisters, and he said, "You stupid Republican," you know. And it's like, oh, we're going to have to tone down our talk a little bit, baby. You know. But it is a challenge, though, when they're dealing with that.
And Jay, your story of being a kid just proves, too, that kids represent this innocence. It's like that whole hate thing.
Yeah.
It has to be taught.
It's taught.
Because you were assuming that everybody, if he was an adult running, he was a good guy. So this takes us by surprise.
And it is so jarring for kids because you're looking on TV and this man is saying things you know is wrong.
It's wrong.
Right.
Yes. And
you know?
I mean, like, just like the way you explained when you were a kid, it's the same election night. I went to bed sick to my stomach, and the next day I was worse, you know, because I knew exactly.
In a purge.
I have no idea. I woke up even
like,
worse
it's
because I
crazy.
knew exactly what was going to come out of 45, especially for the Latino community. And ever since, it's just been one thing after another.
And the Muslim community, oh my gosh.
So,
This man was talking
we're all
about
hurting, you know.
We're
on
going
you
to send the
exactly.
FBI to do surveillance on their churches. Does that sound like the civil rights? I mean, I remember being. It's like, oh my God, the government was like, was putting surveillance devices on black churches.
I mean, you know,
and now
what
they're talking
happened
about
to
doing
the
that to
First
Muslims.
Amendment? And you know, and that's something that I talk about with my fifth graders. We talk about the amendments. We talk about our rights. You know, what people have the right to do and why. Because it's important. And it's laws.
Yes.
And it's laws out there that we have to learn how to follow. Did we put them in place? You know, they've been coming around for centuries. They've been changed and audit. So it's just something that they have to learn and they have to adjust. Adjust. Because you can't go around, you have the freedom of speech, but you can't go around putting your hands on people, you know. 45 is like, I feel like he's kind of teaching violence again.
Oh,
he's-
it's
he's
segregation.
the
is
balance
all
that
over.
we were trying to get has alleviated. It's like, is he trying to get the races not to get along anymore? Is he trying to say, hey, you're in this category because one person or someone or did this, and so all of you are, all you Muslims, all you build bombs, all you guys do that, all you African Americans, you sell drugs, you
Right.
do this, and you know, Caucasians, Latinos, you're embezzle, and Latinos, you're over here illegally. What the world? You
I
know,
know.
how can you fix
It's
it?
the only ones that commit the crimes. according to
It's
Yeah.
them.
all that hope in
You know?
2008 that we felt that election night in 2008.
Yeah, that's why I thought we were going
And-
to wake up to a purge.
And it was a breakthrough. It was like, wow, we're living in a new country
I know.
And we went
that
back.
that can have that happen. And then it took me a long time to figure out that, you know, I would see Obama 4 or 5 months after the election. It's like, wow, and I would be inspired. And then I realized that there were other people looking at that same scene, and they were having an intense emotional thing too. Only it wasn't inspiration. It was
No. It was
fear,
fear. It's
or
fear. It is
I don't want
fear.
to speak for somebody else, but it was something that was opposite of what I was looking at, and
It's fear.
you could see it coming.
But I do think
It's a
what you're
wake-up
saying,
call.
you know, he's 45 is actively making divisions.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's
Actively, because when
dividing.
you, yeah.
doing
anyway.
some type of
And I
fraction
just
I've never
think,
heard of.
you know,
People
we
eat up the
can't
lies.
shut up, and we can't, you know, we can't stop teaching our kids to love each other
Right.
and what their rights are, and you know,
It's all about
that
educating.
school's a safe place.
It's all about
and-
educating individuals. I think that's what it is.
You know, I found myself now because of these flashbacks to when I was a child, and I'm doing this when I was a child. Okay, I remember distinct times, especially over at St. Paul. There was a lady, Mrs. Kroger, and she pulled me out in the hallway one day, and I was probably in 3rd grade, and she got down on my level and she said, Jay, I want you to know that you're a smart boy, and don't you let anybody tell you you're not a smart boy. I was thinking, no, nobody tell me I'm not smart. You know, I was thinking I didn't even understand what this lady was talking about. You know, and now later I did understand. Okay, this is just some liberal white lady that was trying to
Yeah.
make a difference, and I have spoken to Latinos I didn't even know, dude, since this election, just going, this guy Trump is a mess. I see it. I'm with you know, and I feel stupid, but I do it, and I think it's received okay because I think they know where I'm coming from, and it's hard to have that. How do you go up to somebody and say, dude, I saw what this man said last night, and this is terrible, you know? But I don't know. I just think that we need
It's all
to
about
be
educating.
there for each other.
Yeah.
You just gotta educate people, you know, especially those that don't think like you. And
Yeah.
I mean, he
I
has his
agree,
base,
totally
and you know,
agree.
I always, if I can get, you know, a minute with someone from his base and explain to them what exactly our community is going through, you know,
Oh yeah.
it's all about humanity, in my opinion, you know, and you know, build a wall, build it. It's just rallying up individuals, and you know,
And all it is a hostility.
it's just a
move.
hostility.
just
I mean,
blurred
It's
now.
a hostility.
but see that those lies, that hostility feeds people,
Oh, yeah.
and so then these individuals have a certain perception of Latinos. You know, Latino culture. There's many countries, but but people think it's just Mexican. Are you Mexican? It's not. There's
Right,
Puerto Ricans,
right.
there's Colombians, there's
Yeah.
Dominican Republic, Central, South America. There's Cubans. It's not just that, but see, it's just,
Oh, yeah.
it's Mexicans.
But
you
the
know?
Trump's base doesn't really
They,
care
well, no, they don't.
about
They do not.
that.
Yeah.
Just like you know, the people who he's speaking to and firing up. I mean, they're attacking Sikhs because they have turbans and. You know, like they want to hear, hey, that guy's really not a Muslim. Well, close enough. You know, I mean, that's how stupidity works, and that whole hostility move to bring it back locally. There's a group that is trying to rename the Morgan Street Bridge Police Memorial Bridge, and that's nothing but a
What's the
hostility move.
purpose?
Well, this is what was the Cox Patterson tragedy that was a while back. where the police officer died. And so as a result of that, they want to somehow name the Morgan Street Bridge.
Investigation. It's still under investigation.
I know.
So I don't see how they want to name it anything for something that's still under investigation because no one still knows what exactly happened.
And if you were really, maybe you would rename the street where the man died on Turner Street. Why would you go over to the Morgan Street Bridge? It's a hostility move. Because they know that there's a sentiment within the black community. It's like, well, I don't know what happened because there was no cameras, there was no nothing. And there is a little
Young
bit
man
of,
had no crime.
hey,
He had no record.
maybe he did do something wrong, maybe he didn't, but it just feels a little hostile that everybody jumps to a conclusion on something that you can't know.
That's interesting.
But
I know.
you'll see it. It's the same thing. It's a hostility move.
know.
It's
So-
sticking it to them.
And so I think, one thing, not only education is a big part of what we need to do, but being like who we are, and what we do with our actions and what we do with our decisions and who we choose to talk to, who we go out of our way to talk to. And what we do with our time is also important,
How does your son deal with the fact being gay and 45 being in office? Is it for him? Is it for him he just worries more about his friends because how diverse he's?
I don't think he thinks about it much.
Oh.
And I think a big part of that is he knows he's got a very loving, accepting family, which is not what everybody has who, comes out as gay. Because where I teach at East High School, I facilitate the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance group. So that's one thing I do because I think,
Empower.
because they affectionately named me Gay Mom. Somebody just slipped that out once. The mom of the gays. I know, so I wear that with pride. But it is really amazing how many of them you can tell they like. Some kids have some real psychological issues, like
Yes, they do.
some real issues of acceptance. First of all, accepting themselves, and second of all, and then they kind of live this double life. Some of them, and they're searching for acceptance
Yes,
of
they are.
just
Yes,
who
they
they
are.
are, and they haven't figured it all out
No.
yet, and they still want to be loved just for who they are. So.
I think that affects their education too. I think
Oh
it's
my
more
gosh.
therapeutic counseling that's needed throughout schools, throughout
Right.
the nation,
Right.
to help some of these kids find out who they are because they're so lost and it interferes with their education because they're preoccupied.
Oh, well, just hearing somebody from a church saying that, if you're gay, you're an abomination.
I mean,
and
just-
some of them have heard things like
Just what
that.
45 says, all these little things, it preoccupies them, and they don't know how to leave that outside the classroom
Oh.
and come in and learn.
Yeah.
And they go, what is this learning going to do? Well, it's going to
Right.
get you more opportunities. It's
Right.
going to develop you into a different person.
Right.
But it's just that therapeutic is just really, and they have good, I build confidence. I'm really big on building my kids'
Right.
confidence and saying,
Right.
hey, you are someone and you are going to be someone very special in this world.
Right.
But when that confidence is gone and
Right.
someone's
It's really-
beating up on them all the time and, saying, oh, you're gay, you're gay, you're gay, that bullying is something,
I know. Well,
I don't tolerate it at all.
Right. But they hear it. They
And they hear it.
It is tough to do that fine line, and we were talking a little bit before about how the millennials just sort of they've got their own little thing, and I think a lot of them didn't take Trump seriously. I know my kids had a tough time with it because he would walk into the room and we'd have the TV on. It's like, look at what this dude just said, and my son would laugh, ha ha ha. No one's going to like that fool because he's doing all the things that we've taught him all his life is wrong.
Right.
Right? And so, of course, that fool can't be elected. And this is a real wake-up call. All right? And the reality is that there are going to be haters out there. This is something that I think that I felt it was my obligation. My parents taught it to me. I teach it to my kids is that you are dealing with a hostile world. There are haters out there. Welcome to the struggle. It's been going on for 400 years. Now you're part of the struggle. You don't get to opt out. Guess what? You don't get to opt out. And so you're going to have to learn how to cope with this reality. And it doesn't mean that everybody's bad people, but it means that there are bad people, and it means that there's, and even the silent racism, what is the word? I'm getting lost in terms of my terms, but there's the overt racism, but then there's the very institutionalized sort of racism that you have to deal with. And kids have to know about that stuff. And, you know, this is something, if you're a majority kid, you don't have to be taught that. But if you're a black kid, you better know
You have
it.
to learn it.
You better
have
know
to
it.
learn it.
And it's a challenge to teach that in a way that has somebody who is worldly enough to know what's going on, so you're not naively just walking out there and, you know, getting eaten by wolves, you know, but at the same time not being so closed off and scared, and because it's difficult being in an environment where the world doesn't like you,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
That's a difficult thing to deal with. And when I saw Trump come down there, I thought, I don't think these Mexican folks know anything about this. I think they came up here to work and live their lives, and now they're hitting this buzzsaw that is American racism. And I don't know that they've got a point of reference. At least when I went through it, I had black parents, you know, that was able to bring that up.
I didn't
to go
understand why he chose different races to attack. Like he chose the Latino race to just attack. He chose the Muslim race to attack. Then he said, okay, the Obama health care, let's get rid of it. Let's do this. Let's do that. I'm like, what are you doing? Are you thinking?
Healthcare.
Yeah, health care. Can you know how many people died because they didn't have health care and the Obamacare? But in other countries, it's been for years. They've had free health care.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think
do your research.
but you know, it goes back to that whole racist society, and Democrats are so stupid that they didn't put a clear picture in the minds of people of who the beneficiary of Obamacare was. And I see it all the time. I work at a local company it's a good company, and it has very good retirement benefits. And I see people walking out of there way before age 65. And when they walk out of there, what insurance do they get often? Okay? And so, you know, Democrats did a horrible job of saying who the beneficiaries are. And the Republicans did a really good job of saying, well, the only people that are benefiting from this are people you don't like anyway. They're those darky people or something. And that's why Obamacare was vulnerable, you know, because the systemic racism in this country is so strong and so deeply embedded. And if you can convince these folks that don't worry about it, you know, this will hurt minorities, they'll let you take the pants right off their butt. You know, I mean, they will. They'll take you could take their wallet if you say somehow if you take my wallet, if I take your wallet, it'll hurt black people. That's okay. It's crazy. It is. It's crazy. That's how powerful it is.
That's crazy.
You know, and but I think that's true of. With the Muslim community, I wish we had an example of somebody from the Muslim community speaking today, but I think that they're also one of those in that place where I think they can go for a long time and it's all cool, and then all of a sudden it's not cool, you know, which is a very different experience than black folks where it's always uncool, pretty much.
Yeah, I think throughout life, there's many challenges, no matter what race you are, but I find in the African American race, I see in the Latino race too, we have barriers, and to be able to overcome them, it's like you have to be a certain way. I don't like being known because I'm outspoken as an angry black woman. I'm not angry. I just learned how to speak my mind. It took me 20-something years to get here.
Good. That's good. That's what I want to teach my daughters. You know, they're female, they're Latina. You know, I'm not the angry Latino either. You know,
Right.
but you learn to, you know, to speak up, and that's what I've always. I mean, I'm teaching them this little, and I'm like, speak up for what's right. You know, speak up. You don't want to be, you know, silent.
No.
We can't be. especially now in the time like this. But right now, obviously, you know, they're 9 and 7, so you know, you explain it to them, you speak up, but in a way that they understand how to speak up. You know, because right now the innocence, they don't know. You know, all they do is hear it, TV and school, and they come back. You know, I have that really good relationship with them where we ask them every day how was school, and they're really open of what happens in school, which is really good. You know, and
That's
but
very
there
good.
are kids out there who just keep to themselves, and because they're scared, you know, they don't want to talk about their mom or their dad or their uncle. Maybe they're undocumented. They don't want to talk about it.
Or they don't want to make their parent upset.
They don't want to make the parents upset
if
because
the parent is
there's
undocumented,
that fear that, you know what, don't say anything at school. If they ask you, it's real. Don't they ask you questions? Don't answer. If they ask you for this and that, they want our number. Don't. I mean, there's it's real. The threat, the
threat
scare,
and the fear.
It's the fear is real, especially you know, when they stop. Don't go to a certain state agency, or don't go to those places. Why? Because they're gonna ask for your social. They're gonna ask for your address, name, everything. We don't want to put a red bullseye on ourselves. So you keep quiet.
How about
So then, how do you live with that? You know?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
you know, especially, you know, all these individuals, DACA recipients, and just in general, anyone. You don't want to put yourself on a red bullseye, and that's what we're dealing with. Latino community is dealing with that.
Yes.
There's people that just say, you know what, don't say anything, don't speak of anything,
Right.
just keep your mouth shut.
You
Fly
know,
under
that,
the radar.
Fly
that
under the
don't
radar.
say anything, don't speak. I was speaking to one guy, and this also set up the connections, the similarities, that there's a lot of these young Latino men, young men, and they're hearing this stuff at schools where, you know, get Trump, he'll build a wall, he'll throw you on the other side of it. And these are young men, and all of a sudden they're like, you know what, the next joker that talks about building a wall, I'm going to pop him in the head, you know. And that's how men react to stuff, right? And their parents are like, no, you need to chill, you need to leave that alone and stuff like this. And it reminds me back to, again, when I was coming up, because I was in the early 70s, the Black Power generation, is like, if someone calls me the N-word, we're going to have to fight, okay? I may have to get my butt kicked, but we're going to have to fight.
You're going to throw some punches.
And yes,
Right?
I mean, you know what? I may have to steal on him, but you know, but I think that was a generational thing, because there was a point in time where someone could just call you that at the bank or something, or whatever, on the street, and apparently, it's just it was a different thing, and I remember that being a friction when I was younger.
Yeah, I remember all kind of little words being a problem. I'm like, but they're just words. Well, how do you spell them? And I love the fact that you're teaching your daughters now, because being quiet. I've always taught my children. One thing I did teach my children when they were going through school is how to talk up, to share with me what happens at school. And I said, I talk about due process.
Right.
And I tell them this due process, you know, I'm going to hear your side and I'm going to hear the other side, but you do have the right to tell your side. And and then I can hear the other side before I make my decision. But I really always respected adults. If a teacher said that you did something, I'm sure you probably did it.
Oh, yeah.
But let's see how it actually played out.
Right, right.
So teaching them to be vocal is very important throughout life. Throughout life, it's just very important to know how to speak your mind. And if something hurts, say it hurts.
Yeah.
You hurt my feelings when you said that.
And there's nothing wrong with
And
admitting that
why?
you're afraid of something.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing, you know, there's nothing wrong with admitting that, you know. But this is another teachable moment in terms of our democracy. We spoke about that a little earlier, that, you know, there is an element out there, and there are folks that actually want to do you harm. And now that's not an abstract, that's proven now. And there is a responsibility to be politically active, at least enough to say, you know, if someone's saying awful things about me and threatening me like Wallace was, then my obligation would be to vote against that guy. That guy can't win, you know. We'll deal with the chumps that do win, but that guy can't win. And that's something that I think the new generation needs to deal with this. And I think Latinos have to go through that as a
we still have
process.
to go through
as,
that process because
Oh, yes.
our turnout vote is very low.
It's very low.
I mean,
it's where
you-
black people were back
I mean,
in 19.
It's really low, and that's the education piece too.
Right.
Is to get them out to vote.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we're the largest minority in the United States, but yet our turnout
Yes.
vote is extremely low.
Extremely low.
So
Yeah.
that's strategic,
That,
Yes, it is.
unfortunately.
But it's a cultural thing
It's
too.
an
I
older
mean,
thing.
you know.
But I attended a workshop and they were speaking on why people didn't go out to vote and how they kept racists from going out to vote. They said, like, sometimes with African Americans and Latino, they'll put the voting place close by a police station, so we're not going to go there. Or they'll make police officers available to make them uncomfortable. And they had something where they were called, what's it called? Purging. It's another.
Purging the rolls.
Yes.
Right,
And
right.
so what they would do, if you hadn't voted in a long time, they'd take you off the list.
That is true.
So when
That's
you go
normal.
to vote, your name is not, it doesn't appear. So it's so many different ways to stop people from voting. It's evil.
I even
Well, it's desi- it is
it's-
the thing is it's designed just one little thing. My voting place actually is in this building, you know, and I have lived in the same place for 30 years, so I don't have to worry about it. But if you move and you move past a certain, people need to be aware enough that while you have to go and let them know so that you can be registered at the new voting place, and little things like that can have a huge impact if people aren't aware
Yep.
that that's
and I even had it at
what can
home
happen.
with my wife. You know, when we went, I mean, I made her go vote in the
Yeah.
last presidential election, and she's one of those where I've been, you know, trying to get out of the shadows. Like, you got to go to vote. You got to do it. We have to do it. You know,
Right.
You know,
Even
it's
the
our
local.
yeah. We have to do it. But to your thing is how when we got there, you know, if I would have not gone with her, I think she would have not had been able to vote because her something had to do with changing address. She never updated something, and they said, well, now you have to actually go to your polling place of the previous address, which was on the other side of town.
Right.
And I said, no, she can vote here. You know, give her a ballot. She
Right.
can vote here. And
And-
she actually cast her vote. But if my wife is one of those where she would have been like, okay, well then I'll go to my polling place. Well, I'm not going to the other side of town. I guess I'm just done. And
Change your
But,
mind.
you know,
That happens.
But in that situation, I almost hate to throw this out there because I don't exactly know what I'm talking about, but I think you can still vote, but you can only vote for the national. You can't vote for the things that are
Local?
specific to your
Precinct,
district.
maybe.
Like, for instance, in your precinct,
Yeah.
maybe I moved to
Maybe
a different
aldermans,
precinct
yeah.
and there's a different alderman race
Yeah.
or a different school board race.
Yes.
They give you a limited ballot or something. So if you do move, I mean, that's another conversation that we're going to have is
That's
about
right.
the whole
Voting.
About
is
voting.
the
That's a
whole
good
voting.
one.
You gotta
Good one.
mobilize.
Because even
No,
like
it is
with
serious.
home rule, people didn't actually know what it meant. And home rule was actually really deep. I just did research on it because I was curious.
Okay.
And
There was a lot of fake information on it.
oh my goodness.
Oh my
Right.
God. But if you vote for that, maybe, you won't be able to get groceries. I
Right.
thought, world. Anyway, that's another one is
That's a good topic.
is fake news. But
Yeah.
Bringing it back, I'll tell you one thing that I picked up on is the cultural aspect of that because, again, I came up through the Black Power generation and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, and that started to gain steam, that mass participation. We've got to participate. We've got to, influence the political process or all of this stuff is for naught. And when my kids came of age, we would go down and vote together. We always vote early. That's a black thing, so that in case they trying to do something,
I just go vote when
So that's why we go early, just in case, So,
get it over with.
and also I got time to fight back if I have to. But you bring your kids and you go through this process. It's like going to communion. It's a rite of passage. It's a kind of a cool thing, and I don't think that's quite in the Latino community yet, but it will be, and hopefully this will
Well,
be
after
the accelerant.
45 or 45, I'm sure we'll have.
Yes.
It has to be like the acceleration
Yeah.
for that because
Y'all are gonna have
Right.
to jump fast.
I mean,
And they
we're gonna
to
have to go
realize
from
that
1 to like
felons
10.
can vote too.
We
Oh, yeah.
have to
They
go from like
have
1 to
these
10.
felons convinced that they
That
can't,
they can't
vote,
vote,
but
right.
they can vote.
Because they hear that somewhere in the country they can't. They can't in Texas, but we ain't in Texas, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, this is how the misinformation and those are all subtle ways of suppressing the vote. And,
Suppressing.
you know, there's,
Yeah.
but that's one of the things that comes out of this is that, number one, maybe we're all in it together, and number two, we really we can't let this trend continue.
Yeah.
This could get to a really,
Fake
really
news,
bad place.
But real conversations.
Yes, yes. There we go. That you know, maybe we will try to do something on fake news coming up.
We
but,
should.
Well, I'm going to say we've kind of been at it for a while. I wanted to thank you, Mindy. I wanted to thank you, Rhonda. I wanted to thank you, Cesar, for the conversation. And hopefully we can be around to do this again and again and again.
yes.
I hope that this
Enjoy.
can become a
I like
Yes.
I like
series.
talking about, you know, the experiences I have at home, you know. Obviously
Yeah.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the Latino community, you know.
Right,
Speaking of
Oh yeah,
for
everything
myself,
you
you
say,
know,
you're speaking for
and speaking
you know,
for
for
my
actually
for
the
my you
largest
know
minority
what
in
happens
America.
in my household with my family, you know. I don't, that's why I'm speaking for
Right.
my familia.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And I
Yes.
think, yeah,
I'm speaking from experience and from life lessons. Life
Yeah.
lessons goes with experience, and I'm still learning.
how about that? No
How
kidding.
about that?
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to be here. I love learning from you guys, and so grateful to be part of this conversation. And anyway, stand up for people who need standing up for.
Exactly.
That's what I think I really am happy about this thing, because we do have to have each other's back. And the fact is, we're all people. We all want the same sorts of things. And I just thought it was very interesting, the fears that I have. Everybody else is sharing this on some level as well, you know, and so we got to make a better tomorrow. So,
Yes, indeed.
Thanks,
all
Joe.
right. Well, thank you guys very much for hanging in for this long, and look forward to other installments of Conversations with UID. So, thank you much.